Hi, I'm Father David, and welcome to Friar Time. Today, we're not just talking about climate change, we're talking about moral change, because this isn't just a scientific issue, it's a spiritual one also. Pope Francis writes in Laudato Si, the earth, our home, is beginning to look more and more like an immense pile of filth. Those are his words, not easy words to hear, but necessary ones. Because when creation suffers, it is the poor who suffer first. And when we wound the earth, we wound ourselves. St. Francis called the earth our sister. But tell me, if your sister were being poisoned, would you ignore it, or would you fight for her life? Today we have with us Franciscan friar Brother Jimmy Kernan. He is a physicist who teaches at Siena, an excellent Franciscan college near Albany, New York. Brother Jimmy will help us address the issue of climate change and to better understand what is happening all around us every day. This is Friar Time, so let's start talking. Welcome, Jimmy. It's good to have you here with us. Now, for viewers who might not exactly understand, like myself, exactly what is a physicist doing working with climate change?
Yeah, so part of the work that I'm doing is really focused on education. So I'm teaching students and working with them day in and day out on kind of what are the mechanisms, what's happening in the physical world in terms of climate change. But then in my work, it's a lot of working on sustainable energy solutions. So working on materials that might help us create better batteries or better storage systems for energy that would help us transition to more sustainable energy technologies.
Uh-huh.
And things of that nature.
So what you're doing is helping to find new ways in the future to help us conserve energy and not use the earth like a
Yeah,
big battery almost.
yeah. So one of the biggest challenges with our more sustainable energy solutions like solar, like wind, is that, well, the sun goes down, the wind stops blowing every once in a while. So we need better ways to store energy for those technologies. So I work in that side of how do we store energy in a clean and just way as well, of
Oh,
making sure that we can take the energy that comes from the earth in a very sustainable way. The wind's going to blow, the sun's going to come up that we can continuously kind of use. But how do we store it so that we can use it at night or use it when there's times where we might need more energy?
uh-huh. Hmm. No, that makes a lot of sense, really. So for viewers who might also not understand exactly what climate change means, let's start simple. What exactly is climate change, and how is it different from just like bad weather or a climate variation?
So I think what we see with climate change is that it's a much more broad um, variation in weather systems and um, kind of like increases in temperature. So uh, we have hot days, like we get heat waves or we have very abnormal weather days that occur. But what we're seeing with climate change is we're seeing a complete increase in temperature across the globe in most places. And those are concerning kind of levels of when temperatures are consistently increased more and more in all of these different areas, we start seeing these much more dramatic effects and changes in entire systems. Like when ocean temperatures rise significantly, that changes things like the strength of hurricanes, changes the amount of like rain that we'd get from a hurricane or something like that, where in the past, like it's hurricanes or storms that we see and like we still see them happening, but we're going to start seeing more rain falling when things like that occur. So I think that's just one of kind of the many examples of
Uh,
we start seeing uh, areas facing warmer temperatures will experience droughts more, and where there's drought, there's also going to be heavier rains than other areas. So
yeah,
as areas dry up and that water makes its way into the atmosphere, we get more that water is going to fall somewhere else and usually lead to more rain in some other places.
so, growing up, I think we've all experienced, oh, July, it's going to be a heat wave.
Mm,
And that usually lasted a couple weeks. But what we're seeing now is this kind of weather, like, become the norm almost.
yes.
You know, I can see people preparing for hurricanes like they would prepare for a thunderstorm.
Hmm.
It's just become very common.
Yes. Yes, it's become much more common. So I think we're experiencing some of these events much more frequently than we typically would in the past, and they're getting extended longer.
Uh-huh.
I think there's a lot of kind of things showing up on, yeah, heat waves have happened, but heat waves are a couple of days longer than they used to be,
Uh-huh.
or we're experiencing them more frequently than we used to throughout um, all different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And we're seeing this, I think, really happen globally. And I think that's where it's like, oh, maybe this isn't just like a weather pattern changing in an area. Like there's some very global things happening with this.
Now, some argue that all of these things we just mentioned, the Earth has gone through these patterns, and maybe we haven't looked at a long enough time to really understand that this is something that the Earth goes through all the time. But so, to what extent might this be maybe a natural process in the Earth's maybe long-term cycle versus the result of human activity?
So I think how rapid it's happening. So we've started really measuring kind of temperatures very closely, and especially over the past like 150, 175 years or so across the surface of the Earth. And then we can also trace back temperatures with scientists and the work they do, thousands and thousands of years can get a sense of, okay, what was the temperature of the Earth around this time and the
Mhm.
average temperature? And they do that by kind of piecing back together of, oh, like looking at like fossilized trees, and it's like,
Oh,
oh, like how wide were the like rings on trees? And they're able to piece together like kind of the sense of what was the temperature of the Earth at all of these times. And what we're seeing is the temperature of the Earth did change and kind of goes through these cycles. And we're at a point naturally where we'd be at kind of one of our higher temperatures, not super high. And so a pretty moderate temperature for the Earth, like not quite an ice age, not quite this really high temperature. But what we're seeing is a rapid increase in temperature that started occurring right around the Industrial Revolution.
okay.
Um, and that rapid temperature increases, yeah, that increase in temperature might happen on Earth, but would happen over thousands, thousands of years where we've seen it in a couple hundred.
So the acceleration is the problem.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
how that would be the evidence that would tell us this is human activity.
I would say so. It's amazing when you start putting a lot of these kind of the charts side by side and
No,
seeing like, oh, temperatures rising across the globe, and oh, it's amazing. We start seeing that right around when the Industrial Revolution, we
right.
started burning fossil fuels uh, and seeing them kind of go side by side with each other. That it certainly is one of the impacts.
So there are, for people who would be skeptical or overwhelmed by so much data, let's say about
Mhm.
this, what is the clearest scientific evidence that you would say today that climate change is real and accelerating? And how can ordinary people understand that without being overwhelmed by so much data?
Mm. One of the things I use with my students that I think it kind of puts in perspective because it's something we pay attention to pretty frequently is like, oh, like what's the high temperature of the day? We're going about our day, we're figuring out how we need to get ready. And uh, in the past 50 years, we've seen a significant shift of we have a lot more average highs or record highs uh, than we do record lows anymore.
Oh,
So it's
oh,
we're seeing like on a like every day has a record higher,
yeah.
and we when there's been breaks of those records, we're seeing a lot more record highs. So I think that's we're seeing this shift into higher temperatures taking place, and some of the results. And I think that's something we can kind of grab onto and
Hmm.
our daily kind of experience of the.
So, Jimmy, what's actually causing this? So, you said that, as soon as the Industrial Revolution
Mhm.
started, we began to see this kind of acceleration in
Yeah.
temperature. So, we hear terms like carbon emissions, fossil fuels, greenhouse gases. So, what are the main drivers then of climate change today? What's really behind this global temperature and extreme weather we're experiencing?
Yeah. So I think the one thing about it is, so we talk about carbon emissions a lot. I think
Uh,
you use the word there. And so we throw out carbon emissions. We're talking about carbon dioxide mostly. And with methane also being a carbon emission in there as well. But carbon dioxide is the kind of big one that we all talk about because that's what we're putting the most of in the atmosphere. And what carbon dioxide does in the atmosphere is it stays there for a long time. It can stay in the atmosphere for thousands of years. But then what occurs is when the sun sends energy to the earth and it's this light and this radiation, and it hits all the particles on earth and it helps warm the earth up. And it's part of what helps keep earth livable. And is that it keeps it this nice temperature for us to be able to live in. But just as much as this radiation and this light reaches earth and gives energy to the earth gives radiation back. So what carbon dioxide in the atmosphere does, though, is it's really good at trapping the radiation that comes from Earth. So it almost kind of creates a blanket over the Earth, a little bit of this radiation that would usually, or light that would end up going back out into outer space, and that it gets kind of trapped in and then sent back to Earth. So we're
oh,
seeing this energy get trapped kind of inside the atmosphere.
oh, I see.
With that energy kind of increasing over time, it leads to these kind of higher temperatures that we see because we're seeing this light energy trapped inside.
So it's like
And
a pot on a lid.
yes,
I mean,
yeah,
a lid on a pot.
yes,
So it kind of keeps
yeah.
everything in.
Yes.
I
So
got you.
it's
Okay.
yeah, it keeps all this radiated energy inside.
So, how is climate change then already impacting people, especially from what we can see, we can hear from Laudato Si, we can even see around us. It seems to impact especially those who are poor or displaced, or those who are living in what we might call vulnerable areas.
Mhm.
How would that, how is that impacting those people particularly?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pieces in that. So I think one of the great things I get to do at Siena is work with students on kind of storytelling about this. And I'm thinking of some of the students right now. We have a student who works with us who is her family's from Bangladesh and talks about how rising sea levels are impacting the farming because the salt water is getting into
Oh,
some of these
uh-huh,
lands where they would typically farm. So it's causing kind of migrations in their country
uh-huh.
uh, to be able to make their living by farming and the industry that they take part in. And then another one of our students who uh, grew up in a Coast Guard family and traveled around and lived in Guam for some time and saw coral reefs dying
Wow.
around her in her time there because and the pollution on like beaches and things there. And so these are people's homes being impacted by some of the results of climate change.
So, I mean, it's interesting because I remember being at meetings in Rome, and it was during this
Mm,
heat wave, and it was 101 in Rome. But air conditioning was scarce anyway.
yeah.
Italians do not believe in air conditioning. But the whole idea of, in some areas where in that heat wave, it had gone even up higher in some places, even the idea of being able to be in a cool place
Mhm.
was bad. We can see that here when there's a extreme temperature and something, and people go to schools or shelters for a cooling area like
Yeah.
that. So I can understand that.
Yeah.
So amid all the warnings, amid the reports, are there real solutions that are happening right now? So what would you say are the promising solutions, innovations right now that maybe we don't know about happening right now in terms of climate change? So considering these innovations, are there signs of hope?
Yeah, I think there definitely are signs of hope. One of the big innovations that I see taking place is kind of in the energy sector that I work in, and our energy technology is getting better. So our solar panels are more efficient. So
Uh,
we still need a lot of space for them to get as much electricity as we need, but maybe not as much as we've needed in the past. Um, Wind energy is becoming more accessible, and I think one of the things that's always been a major roadblock to transitioning to maybe some of these energy sources has always been cost,
yeah.
and which is very reasonable of like energy costs a lot of money, and it's hard to justify spending a ton of extra money all the time on some of these things. But the cost to things like solar and wind are becoming much more accessible for ordinary people in
Hmm.
some ways. And there's a lot of community projects available. So I know, depending where you are in like New York State, for example, there's ways that people can buy into solar in their communities, depending on kind of their zip codes, and it's still being developed. And like, but
Hmm.
so there's opportunities that are starting to grow in these
Is
areas.
the idea of the panels on top of homes,
Mhm.
is that really an efficient way of getting energy?
It is. It is for like typical households, and it's all dependent on the house. Sometimes um, the uh, roof isn't kind of oriented the right way to get to maximize the amount of solar
Uh-huh.
energy that you'd be able to get. But it's something that like companies in the area can come out and do assessments and figure out if it's viable. So it's very dependent on uh, the geography and some of
Uh,
it's really even the orientation of your roof. Does it get a lot of sun during the day?
well, let's take a
And
place. Let's say a house in Phoenix or Albuquerque in the Southwest that gets a lot of sun.
yes,
Can that house with the panels orientated the right way actually be energy efficient in terms of not needing to be hooked up to any other grid, but they can run the house on solar panels? Are we there
uh,
yet?
there's pretty close to it. So that comes back to the storage is always the question. So like places in the Southwest are wonderful for solar because it's sunny most days of the
Right,
year.
yeah,
Where here us in the Northeast might not have as much efficiency out of our panels, but it's always that when the sun goes down at night, kind of where's your electricity going to be coming from
I
at
see.
that time? So
Hmm.
it's can it be uh, produced and then stored during the day to use it at night, and so that's where the things like batteries and stuff start coming in too.
And that's where the efficiency needs to
Yes,
be. Yeah,
and so that's where I think there's also a lot of hope and promise of some of the battery technology that is being developed right now is really impressive compared to what we've had in the past and
right.
what we're using right now. So uh, even when it comes to things like electric vehicles and those being dependent on batteries, I think we're going to see some pretty big leaps in battery technology in the
Really.
coming years.
So, so I never really thought of this, and I don't know if you out there have, but so the battery is really a major component of this whole thing,
Yes, yes, yeah.
storing this
Storage
energy.
storage becomes a major kind of challenge that's involved in it.
Uh-huh.
Of like the challenge of electricity is the second you produce it, it has to be used somewhere because it's moving,
Uh,
it's flowing. So if if you're producing it at a time but maybe not using it, it either kind of goes off to waste or we can get it into some sort of storage. When we get into storage, it helps us use it this times when we can't produce
right.
our electricity. So it becomes it's one of the things that's really needed to move a energy transition forward.
So it's an integral part of this whole
Yeah,
question then.
yeah,
That's interesting. Um, this issue, as we're discussing it, seems huge. And it's easy to think, I'm just one person. And I think many people really feel powerless in the face of such a global crisis. I mean, I can, separate my garbage between
hmm
recycling, et cetera, and all that. But so, what's your advice to somebody who says, like, what can I do in all this?
yeah. I think the thing is start small. Let's
Hmm.
start where you can. And many communities have wonderful ways to get involved, and it's finding a group that goes and plants trees in your community. That can have such a big effect, especially in urban areas, of reducing what they call that heat island effect. And I know, like walking around New York here at night on a hot summer day, you can
Right,
feel the heat still
right,
coming out of the
yeah.
sidewalk at
Hmm.
night. And things like planting trees help reduce that because it keeps areas shaded, and so it can reduce some of the heat in cities. Uh, and then find ways to get involved in advocacy. I think it's a huge step, and I think it can be a challenging step, but it's writing to your representatives. It's writing to people in government who can maybe make a push for some legislation or some funding and grants that can help push forward some of these transitions. And I think that's always a really powerful step to do. But I think there's always a lot of really great ways to start locally. And
It seems like some of our legislators still really don't believe in this as a fact of life.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah,
so I think that's where people get really frustrated,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. And that is certainly is a challenge of it.
Right. Do you think the urgency of climate change is finally being taken seriously, or are we still kind of stuck in denial, do you think?
I think we are stuck in denial in some ways. And we do see movements and we see some like increases in efficiency and some of this better technology come out. But in many ways, I look at it, it's like we're moving, but maybe not quite fast enough.
Yeah.
And there's, I think there could be a much better urgency with what than where we are right now
Yeah.
on the issue.
Jimmy, I know Michael Perry,
Hmm.
one of our friars who used to be the Minister General. In fact, we did an interview with Michael
Okay.
not too long ago. There is something going on at Siena
Hmm.
about some sort of center
Yeah.
with Laudato Si,
Yeah.
and it's picking up a lot of energy. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, of course. So I'm very privileged to work with Brother Michael and Brother Jacek at the Laudato Si Center for Integral Ecology on campus at Siena, and we do a lot of like research with students, then also like media creation of like how do we engage students on social media to learn about some of these things happening with climate change and in the world, and then also do a lot of like resource development. So we want to provide people with resources to learn as much about this as possible, and whether it's through some events or but just on our website as well. There's a bunch of stuff to read from all sorts of different things. From how do faith traditions talk about this issue, and then
Uh-huh.
maybe what's some of the science behind what's going on, what's the business involved, what's the politics involved in this, and kind of so what's happening in the world and in regards to all this stuff around kind of the environmental crisis taking place.
So this is a real active center that's really moving through the campus and
Yeah.
out beyond that too.
Yeah. So there's three of us friars working with it on campus. We've had this past school year, we had 9 student workers working with us part time and
Uh,
developing content and doing some research and like kind of storytelling about what's going on there and or what they're experiencing, what their families experienced, what people that they know have experienced across the world facing issues of climate change and the environmental crisis, pollution, whatever it may be. So we do a series of events. We host a big symposium in the fall, a day-long event on Siena's campus to uh, learn about and engage in these ideas of bringing speakers in. And this past fall in 2024, we had the UN Secretary General Antonio
wow,
Gutierrez address over 1,000 people at Siena College
fantastic. Wow.
on the issue, and which is a great privilege to have someone like that be able to address the college even virtually. So it was. Uh, these are the types of things that we try to do, and it's hosting big events like that. But then it's also, all right, we're going to go get our hands dirty and put some trees on the ground
Uh,
in the south end of Albany today with some students, and so getting students engaged in what's happening globally and having some spaces to talk about that and share ideas and share concerns and dialogue about some of these topics. But then also, you know what, like we could do something right here in our community. So like, let's go plant trees or let's go to the state house in Albany, New York and tell our legislators that like, oh, we're worried about plastic pollution. And here's a bill that's coming up that could help with plastic pollution. Let's try to push that forward. And because we want cleaner water and
so it's a
cleaner air.
multi-pronged
So
kind of institute.
yes, in many ways, and trying to get involved in as many things as possible. And at the end of the day, for the friars of us who work there, we just talk about relationships is the most important thing that we do. And it's about building relationships with the students, the faculty, and the staff there, but in our community and the Diocese of Albany and our Franciscan province in the
Hmm.
U.S., the order across the globe that we work with, and also just finding ways to engage people in this and give them a pathway to how can they get involved
Uh,
or how can they continue to learn about what's happening.
great. So let's bring St. Francis in again.
Okay.
Okay. So St. Francis is the patron of the environment, of ecology,
Mhm.
which is certainly climate. and sometimes he's regulated, to the bird bath.
Yeah.
He looks pretty in the garden, and not really seen as an impetus for a climate change or for any sort of movement. So, how can we, as Franciscans, and I think all of us watching have a Franciscan heart, certainly, or simply as people of faith, turn our belief into the fact that we're in a relationship with creation that's very Franciscan. St. Francis called all of creation brothers and sisters, brother sun, sister moon. Uh, so, what can we do to make a change and help save our sister Earth? As I mentioned in the intro, if your sister was dying or being
Mhm.
poisoned, what would you do to save her life? So, Jimmy, do you believe that we're going to succeed in this major change of our behavior?
I think that we can. And I think one of the things that you point out, I think is crucial to all of this. It's about relationship. Of We've lost our sense of relationship with the planet.
Mm,
And I think that's something so keen that Francis points out that, yeah, we're brothers and sisters to all of this. And I know in some of the biographies of Francis, they talk about like going and talking to the birds and the flowers and always calling them brother and sister. And then for Francis, to look at the sun and the moon, so these beacons of light, and it's like
yeah,
God shines in that light of that, like we're in relationship to that. And but I think there's something really interesting that Francis does in the Canticle of the Creatures, that like brother sun, sister moon, and stars, but then it's wind, fire, water, and earth after that. And at Francis' time, those would be like those are the fundamental elements of creation. All things are from that. So I think that's what Francis was saying, that we're related to everything, to all
right,
things, including one another. So it's how do we care for each other as brothers and sisters? But that extends to everything in all creation. So it's we need to embrace that relationship in many ways. And I think we get stuck in this, oh, the earth is here for us to use
yeah,
as we see fit, as we think we should be able to. And that we the move of like we're in relationship with this, and how do how do we give gratitude back to the earth who's given us so much?
right,
And I think this is something that always sticks with me when I was a postulant. We first started talking about this stuff. One of the friars is like, "You're going to go down to dinner tonight and eat your brothers and sisters, but they've given their life for you. Like, do you have gratitude for that?" It's like, it's kind of scary at
yeah,
first. It's
really,
like this,
yeah,
it's like, oh, okay. Like, then you go down and you don't want to, you're kind of looking at your plate, like, oh man. But I think it's can shape a perspective of
sure,
like, yeah, like the earth has given us so much. And do we have gratitude for that? And how do we reflect our gratitude? Do we take it like, oh, okay, thank you, and I'll just expect it to come later? Because when maybe does the earth stop giving at some point, or do we put it in a position where it can't give us all of the wonderful things it does? So our relationship always needs to be reciprocal.
right, right,
It, just as much as we're loved by the earth in many ways, and given all these things, we need to love the earth back. And I think that's what Pope Francis, I think, really gets to in Laudato Si, and inspired by Saint Francis, is like it's a conversion of heart in it as well. That's and and I'm always very challenged by Laudato Si as well, Pope Francis, because he talks about, he's like, any technical solution without kind of the heart of humanity in it is going to do us no good.
right,
And I think there's a lot of truth to that. If we don't fix our sense of relationship with the earth, then it's going to be really challenging to make large strides in addressing kind of climate change and uh, that's going on.
yeah. I think that's very well said.
Mhm.
But I think you're right. The key in this is relationship.
Yeah.
And if you really believe that and understand it, I mean, it's a whole change in perspective.
Hmm.
Like you say, a change in heart. And then I think that also changes our behavior.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah.
that's the issue,
Hmm.
is changing our behavior.
Yeah.
Jimmy, thank you very much. That
Oh.
was really, you summed it up much better than I've ever heard before, actually.
Okay.
So
Great.
thank you.
Yeah.
So here's the truth. We are probably the first generation to fully understand the damage we've done to the earth, and we may be the last with a chance to undo some of this. We cannot pass this crisis on to the next generation or the one after that, or we cannot wait for the next pope, the next president, the next prophet. The responsibility is ours. The time is now. So the question isn't, what can one person do? The real question is, what will you say tomorrow if you did nothing today? This has been Friar Time. Take care and God bless. If you'd like more information about the Laudato Si Center for Integral Ecology, please see the screen and you will see the website for that fantastic place at Siena College in Loudonville, New York.